Hi everybody, today we're going to make a chain for use in iClone. I have a basic scene here. I've added a character to my scene that's just for scale, and I have also added an infinite physics plane to the scene in case I want to, play with a physics floor later on. Okay, so to get started, what I'm going to do is add a torus to my scene, and that will be from my chain link. So you can use whatever you want. I'm going to pick one of these kind of fat toruses. There's also one in the create menu that you can add, but it's a thinner one. So depending on the type of chain you need, choose what you want. Of course, these are round and chain links are actually a different shape, but I'm going to use this for now. So double click to add that to my scene. You'll see it's pretty large. Don't worry about that for now. We're going to scale it down in just a moment. And the first thing I want to do is go ahead and orient it so it will be like a hanging chain. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to see where it's rotating, and I can set it so it's exactly at 90 degrees. And there we go. And then I think what I will also do is go ahead and hit the reset transform. And what that does is it sets that everything that is the 0 point now for all your settings. And I just do that because I think it's convenient to have that zeroed out. Okay, so now what I want to do is zoom in on the top of this a little bit. And actually, before that, one more thing. I'm going to go down in the Modify panel to the Pivot section. And now that I have it oriented exactly how I want it, I'm going to click in the top middle position, upper center, and make sure this is set to middle. And that will set the pivot to the very top right in the middle of your chainring. And that will help get everything lined up later on. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. And the next trick is to add the pivot where the chain link will pivot on the next link. So what I want to do is find my physics constraints, and I'll open that window. And what I want to use is the point to point. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag that and drop it onto my figure. You'll see it's got a little line there. Try and get it kind of up near the top, but it doesn't really matter exactly. And drop it on there. Okay, so you see there's a whole bunch of modify things you can set over here. And so you can set everything in the XYZ position and transform. But there's a much easier way, and that is to use the Align tool. So with the constraint selected, click the Align tool, and then click on your chain ring. And here's my alignment. And I'm going to say X, Y, and Z, and that's aligned it with the pivot. And then I'm going to also set my rotation so it's nice and square. You'll see it's kind of pointing off in a funny direction, but that's okay. We just want it square for now. And then I'm going to hit OK. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and use my transform gizmo and rotate it upright. And if I go over here, I can see where it's rotating, and I'm going to set that to 90. So it's exactly straight up and down. So those were just to get that exactly straight up and down in exactly the right location. And we're actually going to change it a little more because chain links do not pivot on the outside edge. They pivot on the inside edge where the next link is against it. So we actually need to move this pivot a little bit. So I'm going to select my transform gizmo, and I'm going to move it down. And I just want to see it peeking through the bottom a little bit there. And that's all I need. And you can see it's kind of disappearing into the ring now. What I might do is go ahead and make it a little bigger so I can see it. So it's sticking up a little bit. And then I'll have to move it a little bit too. So you're going to want to be able to click on this later on. You don't actually need to see the blue part necessarily, but you want to be able to see the sphere part. You want to be able to see the arrow part though. So it's important to not have these be too big. And the reason for that is that if the spherical part of the constraint hits another spherical part of the constraint, it can cause some problems, and your chain might go a little crazy. But so basically what I've done is hide the sphere inside the chain ring and just have the arrow sticking up, and it will pivot right around the bottom of the sphere part of the constraint there. So that's just right. Now what I need to do is set up the physics, because I'm basically going to replicate a whole bunch of chain links, but I do not want to have to set the physics for every single one. So what I'm going to do now is click on the chain link itself, and I can close the constraint panel now. I don't need that. And I'm going to go to the physics and set it to activate physics, dynamic, mass you can leave at 1, friction you can leave at 5, that's fine. Damping set it about 20 is pretty good. Elasticity set it at 0. You don't really want it bouncy at all. So leave the bound type as box, that's just fine. And on your collision margin, set that to 0. It will actually be 0.01, but you want it the absolute smallest as possible, and that's going to allow you to scale your chain down to very small size later on. Otherwise, if this stays up and the edges start colliding into each other, then your chain's going to become very unstable and start shaking all over the place and breaking. So we're not going to use the actual shape of the chain link as physics, because that would, basically make the engine have to work really hard. If we just use the constraint instead, it's much more effective. Now there's another thing we want to set on the constraint, so let's go back to the constraint, and that is if I come down to the rotation section here, and what I want to do is where these on the axis X, it has -90 and 90, I'm going to set that to -25 and 25. And what that will do is will keep the chain links from being able to rotate infinitely on each other. Basically, I want them to, when the upper chain link rotates a certain amount, then it should rotate the next one, because it would be colliding with it. We can use the constraint rotation rather than the actual physics of the object to do that, and it will work much better. You'll notice something else about this. If you look up here, there's a parent-target collision. Leave that off, and then you don't have to worry about these colliding with each other. Otherwise you would. And there's also a breakable option, so if you needed a breakaway chain, you could do that. So this should be pretty good at this point to do this. So right now it's a very, very big link, but I'm going to start out with a relatively large chain link. Actually, let's make it a bit smaller. So I will go ahead and select my scale tool, and I will decrease the chain size to something more reasonable. This is still a pretty big chain, but not ridiculously huge. And then I need to scale in the constraint as well. The constraints don't scale with it, so you need to scale them separately. So I'm going to also reduce that down, and then it looks like I should move it a little bit to get it aligned better again. So what I will do is come up here. It's hard to find where my actual there it is. Okay, the arrow that I'm trying to move is blue, and it's on a blue arrow, so it's a little hard to see. Okay, so I'm going to put that up there. Actually, I'm going to scale it down just a little more. Because I want that ball to kind of be buried within the link. So just like that, I think will be pretty good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is move this entire thing up a little bit. All right, and let me see if I can get kind of a better view on it. And then I'm going to replicate it. So there's there's a replication command. Let's see, where is that? There's multi-duplicate or Control K, and you'll see it. Here's my panel over here, and I have a whole bunch of these. And basically, what I can do is just kind of move them back into place. So I want those all aligned. Well, sort of. We'll figure this out. These are all kind of way off right now. So, whoops. Moving the wrong arrows. Okay, let's see if we can get these aligned better now. Okay, let's try and get them all kind of back in one place. And then I'll rotate around here. You see it changed brightness. That's because I have the GI on. And then I'm going to pull this down until that looks like it's in about the right place for a chain link. And then I kind of need to adjust these spacing a little bit. That looks pretty good there. And then what I want to do is go ahead and rotate it so the links are at 90 degrees. And this one I'm actually there. I got that at 90. And I've got 9 of them here. So I think I'm going to decrease this to 5 just for the example. So it doesn't take quite so long. 4 plus my original will be 5. And I will hit OK. All right, so now I have a bunch of physics chain links, and they all have the pivots on them. So at this point, what I need to do is go and click on each pivot or each constraint. So double click it and select that. Now I can pick a target that is going to attach to, and I want to pick the next link up. Okay, and I'll do that on the next one. This part is a little time consuming because if there was a way to automate it, it would be great. But basically, you just step up your chain and do each one. When you only have 5 links, it doesn't take very long, of course. Okay, and so pick target on this one. And you don't have to worry. This one would be where you attach to your parent object. So it might be the bottom of a helicopter or something like that. So I'm not going to worry about that one right now. We don't need to worry about it. But now you need to select your topmost chain link. Go back to physics. And this is only true if it's the top. If you have this constraint attaching to something else, you don't need to do this. But for my example here, I'm going to use the top link as the parent and set it to kinematic so I can animate it in my scene, just as an example. Okay, so at this point, what I want to do is go ahead and test my scene. So see if it plays. So I'll play the physics and it looks okay. Nothing strange happened. All right, so next thing I'll do is I probably want to move this, but if I move it now, it's just going to move this, and then I might want to be able to place the entire chain at once. So I'm going to go into my scene, and I just want to select the parents, not the constraints. So I find the easiest way actually is to go ahead and collapse the list and then open my props and see they're all collapsed now, well, except for that one. And so I'm going to select all my children, all the ones I want to be children of the parent, and then I'm going to right click in my scene and select attach, and then click on the one I want to be the parent. Okay, now if I move this around, it will move the whole chain. So that just makes that easy for initial placement. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I know the chain works, so I'm going to go forward to my timeline, and I'm going to move it a little bit. So I will, move it sideways a little bit, and I can also rotate it a bit to see what that does. All right. So if you rotate beyond 360, it will record that rotation beyond 360. All right, so now I'll rewind, and I will play my simulation. And you can see how that, as soon as the link gets so far, it spins the next one. Okay, so if you needed something dangling from the chain, you would simply attach that last thing to the bottom chain link, or put a constraint on the last object and have the constraint be pointing at the last chain ring to do that. So, and the other thing I was going to do is show you with the going down and touching the ground. So for example, let's play our animation. Okay, and then when it stops there, then what I want to do is lower it down to the ground. Just to see it collide with the ground a bit. And I'm actually going to pull it back the other way a little too, just to see what it will do. Okay, so now when we play our simulation, it moves over, it's spinning, 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 and then it drops to the ground and bumps on the ground. Okay, so that's a quick and easy way to do a chain. Hope that's helpful.